Welcome to Humanley, the podcast providing allied health and integrative medicine practitioners with the most up-to-date, evidence-based and clinically relevant information. This podcast is a melting pot of ideas on health and well-being and does not replace the advice of your primary healthcare professional. Here's your host, Daniel Reuters.
Hello everybody and welcome to the Humanley podcast. My name is Daniel Reuters. And today I'm joined by a man who needs no introduction, Pete Evans. Pete, thank you so much for being here today.
Pleasure, Daniel, and g'day everybody.
Pete, I'd like to start off talking about a topic that's very close to your heart, and that's food and nutrition. Now, we are at a crisis point with the health of people in Australia. We're at a point now where there's 2 out of 3 adults who are overweight or obese and 1 out of 3 children who are now overweight or obese. How did we get to this point? How have we gotten food and nutrition so wrong, not only in Australia, but the Western society?
Yeah, it's an interesting question, mate. I think there's many factors that can contribute to this. I don't think it's just one. And I think we have to be very careful when we just put all of our eggs into one basket. But let's just point out, I believe that the many factors that have contributed to this starts with education. Misinformation coming through health authorities and mainstream media as to what is a healthy diet, what comes through from the doctors association, so to speak, like GPs, because the information that they're sharing is, I would happily debate, is not up to, not the latest nutritional science. And added to that, we have disconnected ourselves from nature in a huge way. And what I mean by that is that we no longer spend as much time out in nature, we don't respect nature, and we have, as a population, basically taken a shortcut to what it means to be human, so to speak. We don't put as much reverence on food as one of the main tools that we have for long-term sustainable health. We haven't celebrated meal times like we once used to as families, and that reverence about how sacred food is. So I think there's a lot of re-education to be done on what it means to be human, a lot of re-education to understand the types of food that really benefits us physically and emotionally and spiritually. And we can take a deeper dive into any of those areas. But I think that's probably the overarching sort of theme of where our disconnect is.
Yeah, I would agree that there are undertones of what you eat doesn't matter, how you prepare the food doesn't matter. And I think we've gone off the rails, so to speak, and we are losing sight of just how important food is. And speaking of how important food is, what are your thoughts on organic? I eat purely organic food, but many people don't. And I know that you're a big advocate for that. So, if people want to get into cooking their own food and taking control of their health, how important is it for them to start with organic food? Can they start just even getting into the kitchen and cooking and creating their own meals and then get into organic later? Or do you think it's important to start with organic from the get-go?
Yeah, I think it's important that people adapt in their own flow to whatever is important to them and what their priorities are. We go back 100 years, everything was organic. Every single thing, it didn't even need a label, because how do you label something as organic or non-organic? Because everything was organic. So organic isn't a buzzword or a fad or anything like that. It's just the most natural form of food that we have on the planet. And we've witnessed the separation of nature over the last 40, 50, 60 years. And it has definitely and rapidly sped up over the last decade or two. So I would be more inclined to recommend to people that they educate themselves first and foremost of what organic is and what organic isn't, and then understand what additives or what's the right word, inputs either sprayed onto our foods to make them non-organic, the different fertilizers, the different fungicides, the different pesticides, the different ways in which food is grown, whether it's grown also indoors as opposed to outdoors. And that therein lays a huge piece of the puzzle as well. And we have direct correlation between the way that we live our lives indoors as opposed to outdoors at the same time. So we can potentially look at, do we live organically anymore? Or, and do we get our hands and feet onto the earth or into the earth or onto the ocean or into the ocean and into the rivers and streams and these types of things? Do we get our bodies into the natural sunlight, or do we spend our days inside under artificial light? So I think organic is a really beautiful term, but I think not only looking at food, but the way in which we live our lives and our children live their lives needs greater emphasis, I believe, because you can eat all the most beautiful organic food in the world, but if you are living your life indoors, disconnected from nature, then I think that possibly could lead to disease as well. So it's a really interesting thing, and I think, I don't want to put all of the eggs into one basket, but I think organic definitely is the way forward. And I believe that we could change the whole food structure and system when more and more people choose to put into their bodies the most beautiful food on the planet, which obviously is organic and natural.
Such a good point that you bring up there, Pete. I was actually watching a YouTube video the other day that somebody sent me. There's this Swedish environmental researcher named Jörgen Magner, and he did some research in around 2015, and he looked at the levels of toxins and herbicides and pesticides in people's urine when they were eating a non-organic diet, and they were quite elevated. And then just after 2 weeks of eating organically, they basically had none of these toxins in their urine. So it's quite a scary thought when we're told, it doesn't matter if you're not eating organic, it's not going to do you any harm. But if you're finding these poisons and pesticides and things in your urine, it is going through your system and it could be causing some issues. But yeah, you mentioned that just living an organic lifestyle was important. So what's your health routine like on a day-to-day basis?
Pretty simple. Varies a lot as well, so I don't really have a routine as such. I guess, if I looked at sort of the average, it would be my first meal of the day is probably around lunchtime. It is usually has a good amount of animal fat and protein in pretty much every meal that I consume, and that is the best sourced animal products from land or ocean or water. When I say water, I mean fresh water or salt water. And added to that, I supplement with natural herbs that usually we grow somehow ourselves, green leafy vegetables when we can access them ourselves. And if we can't grow them ourselves, then we choose organic always. And then on top of that, we have tubers and rhizomes and things like that. So turmeric and ginger and sweet potato and cruciferous vegetables. So they become basically a supplement to the main portion of our food, which is animal fats and protein. So that, I would say, is part of our daily ritual. As I said, probably first meal of the day is lunchtime, and the second meal will be probably 4 o'clock. Sometimes it's just one meal a day. Sometimes I'll eat 3 meals a day. And next to that, we have connection to nature, as I was mentioning earlier. That can be in the form of working in the garden, planting something, harvesting something, going into the ocean for a swim or a surf, walking the dog or playing with the dog on the ground and going for walks into nature. These types of things, I think, very fundamental to long-term sustainable health. And then obviously we have sleep, which is a huge one for everybody, which often goes overlooked. I attempt to get 8 hours at least every single night. And I'm very grateful that I don't have to wake up with an alarm clock ever, which is fantastic. So I rise with the sun generally, and I go to bed a few hours after the sun sets. What else have we got? Exercise. I see that as play and movement. So we have a trampoline, we have monkey bars, so we can do some body weight exercises. The trampoline is great for the lymphatic system. I've got a skateboard ramp, and as I said before, I go surfing. We've got a table tennis table, we've got a pool table. Not that that is really exercise, except for the brain and hand-eye coordination. But yeah, I don't really do too much of, say, a gym workout. And my partner, my wife, is fantastic. She does yoga all the time, and I had a hamstring injury recently, so I'll be going back into the yoga way of life when I can do that, probably in a couple of weeks' time. And then what else is there? There's emotional well-being and spiritual well-being. When I think about spiritual well-being and nutrition, I think it really boils down to what our purpose is on this planet, what we're here to do or not do, what we're willing to invest our time and energy into, whether that's a positive thing or a negative thing. That comes down to our choices. And then emotional well-being can be one of the things I really like to investigate in myself is my own intuition, and also looking at myself and detaching to see where there may be any weaknesses and any limiting belief patterns or systems or structures that I still hold on to that perhaps weren't mine to begin with, that I adopted either through my family, whether I adopted it through our culture, or any other instances where it became a coping mechanism as a way for me to deal with a traumatic period in my life that no longer serves me. So when we get to consciously evaluate and analyze and take into the awareness who we are, that gives us a really good barometer or compass in which we can bring ourselves back into alignment for our highest good.
Pete, I have been following you for quite a while, and I've seen what's been happening to you, and you were just speaking about emotional and spiritual well-being. So, I think that you are misunderstood by a lot of people, and I want to know, how do you stay objective, and how do you keep a level head through all of this?
Yeah, really simply, I think when you judge somebody, and I think that's what you were just alluding to then, that people form a judgment on someone. I think that without knowing all the information, I think that's a slippery slope for people to entertain on not only me, but anybody or anything or any concept. When we have a reaction to somebody or something without actually looking at the whole picture, I think that's where, as I mentioned before, those limiting self-beliefs can keep us perpetuating those limiting beliefs. So we look for patterns or beliefs or ways in which we can keep those long-held beliefs in circulation in ourselves. So let's use me as an example here. So if people struggle to look at themselves from a holistic point of view and challenge their own beliefs when something is presented in the media about me, it gives people sort of nearly permission to keep those beliefs ongoing for themselves. Now, it takes great courage to look at ourselves when we're triggered by people or events or corporations as to why we are triggered by them. Because generally we should be neutral when new ideas are presented to us or new concepts or new information. When we have a level of integrity and discernment, that gives us the opportunity to, one, look at it from all points of view, whatever that may be, and then investigate it using every single tool that we have, whether it is our intuition, whether it is going down the rabbit hole of mainstream and alternative news sources, if that presents itself in relation to whatever that concept or person represents, and then feeling into that and going, is there any truth in this for me? Is there any truth in what is being presented through these channels, whether it is an individual speaking on social media, whether it is something that you've just seen on mainstream media, whether it is a conversation that you're having with someone. And that takes great fortitude on each and everyone's behalf, that we don't just fall into our deeply entrenched patterns of reaction and biases. And that's why I love sitting across from or having a chat with a really good investigative journalist, because a really good investigative journalist generally won't have or let their bias show. And could you imagine if every single person on the planet looked at everything from that viewpoint and was open to hearing other opinions? And I guess to give you a great example, again, mentioning myself, is every single time people have asked me about medicine, my response is always the same, and it has been the same in the films that I've created and the podcast I have shared, is we need to embrace modern medicine and technologies as well as ancient technologies and wisdom and therapies as well as traditional. So we embrace it all. Now, when we have that ability to look at everything, I believe that's what the term holistic means. Yet when you see, and I've noticed it on social media recently, especially this week, people have accused me of sharing mainstream media sources, and they think that I do not like mainstream media. They've accused me of sharing, let's take, for instance, I shared something about ketamine the other day, where I went in and had a ketamine session earlier this year with a trained therapist, because I was fascinated about this as a healing modality. And people came back and commented quite aggressively to say, how can you be against Big Pharma, yet ketamine is produced by Big Pharma? And I'm like, well, if you go back to what I've always said, is I appreciate and I respect modern medicine as well as ancient therapies or natural medicine. And I believe there's a time and a place for all of them. And just because some of the ideologies that are with Big Pharma that I do not wholly agree with are not in alignment doesn't mean you throw everything that they've created out with the bathwater, or the baby out with the bathwater, as they say, and it's a lesson that I've been told over and over by many people in the natural therapy world. They fell into the trap that they thought naturopathy, ancient healing modalities, ancient wisdom was the be-all and end-all. And they were so rigid in their belief that they've nearly died, and they needed to have modern medicine as a tool to help them regain homeostasis along with those natural therapies. So it's something that has been drilled into me to be able to accept that there is a time and a place for modern medicine, where natural therapies may not be completely adequate. But at the same time, the same has to be said from the other point of view, where we need to embrace and respect naturopathy, natural medicine, alternative treatments, holistic treatments, ancient wisdom, tribal information, grandmothers' wisdom, so to speak, or old wives' tales. And I'm not being sexist there, it's just, that's the terminology. But sometimes we need to employ those methods to help us with an issue that maybe modern medicine hasn't got all the answers for. So I think that was a long-winded answer to your question. But to how do I deal with it? I realize that each and every person is coming to analyze and evaluate something from their own personal belief system, as we started this conversation off with. So I'm excited by it because right now we're seeing huge censorship through the mainstream media channels on natural health. And I think it's an exciting time to bear witness to this. It's nearly like the book burning back in the day. It's nearly like the witches being burned at the stake for offering natural therapies. We're seeing the 2020 version of this right in front of our eyes, where we would have come to the belief where we have evolved to have the ability to look at many different viewpoints as non-threatening, whereas what we're seeing is quite the opposite at the moment.
And I have to agree with you, Pete. We do need to embrace integration. We do need all of the wonderful benefits that modern medicine and modern day science has to offer, but we also need to embrace and not forget how we actually arrived at this point, and that was through traditional healing practices. And still to this day, there are so many wonderful benefits that naturopathy and natural medicine can provide people, and I really appreciate your thorough response. Pete, I was listening to a podcast last night, and there was a quote from a man who wrote a book called Those Who Remain, and it's by G. Michael Hopf. And the quote from this book is, "Hard times make strong men make good times. Good times make weak men, and weak men make hard times." And I just wanted to say that I think you're a strong man, and I think that what you're doing is really important, and we need more strong men and good men like yourself. So keep fighting the good fight, Pete.
We're actually seeing the women at the moment. They're the stronghold at the moment. They're actually ushering in the new paradigm, so to speak. We're seeing the mums, we're seeing the grandmothers, we're seeing the ones, the people that bring in the new life into this world. They're the fighters at the moment, and I'm standing alongside these amazing warriors for truth and justice and the light. And it's interesting that you say that, talking about men, because a dear friend of mine, Dr. Tommy John, about 2 months ago, he recorded a video that went quite viral, just saying, "Where are the men? Where are the men during this pandemic?" Because it seems to be that the women are the ones that are speaking out against the misuse of power from men. and it's an exciting time to see that shift in power, and it definitely is. It has been out of alignment and out of balance for so long, with men being the perceived dominant force through politics, through corporations, through the medical fraternity, and those institutions, especially big pharma and big agriculture. Now we're seeing, and what's been wonderful is the cannabis space has seen a real emergence of the powerful feminine and the divine feminine into a corporate and, you could say, medical platform for the education of this wonderful plant from nature. And I don't think it's any accident that this is coming through over the last five plus years into the cannabis space, which is a direct evolution of the medical and corporate space. So I think we're going to be seeing quite a change in, and I don't like to use the word leadership, but these positions of perceived authority, whether it is government, whether it is the corporate world, and whether that extends itself, and it will extend itself into these traditionally male-dominated areas. So it's an exciting time to be alive, to watch the unfolding of these changes that this evolution of power and integrity. So it's I'm stoked to bear witness and to walk alongside and to help promote these amazing women.
You're just mentioning marijuana, and you released a wonderful documentary called The Magic Plant, and there was just so much wonderful information in there that really resonated with me when I watched it. And I want to hear from you, how important do you think legalization of medical marijuana is in Australia?
Yeah, it's a challenging topic. I just saw yesterday in New Zealand that they didn't pass it in the referendum, but there's the potential that it still could change. But yeah, it's a plant. It's a plant that can be used or abused. It's as simple as that. Like anything, sugar can be used or abused. We have the poppy plant that can be used for greatness or misused for harm. So it's fascinating that human beings need to have, again, going back to this concept of leadership and authority, that we need to police nature. It goes beyond the absurd. It actually borders on the insane, that we have to have laws and regulations around being able to grow a plant in our backyards or front yards or in our garden that has the potential to be used for food. We know cannabis is a wonderful source of food and wonderful protein and essential oils. We know that it has the ability to work with our endocannabinoid system in such harmony and to bring us back into homeostasis and alignment. And it can do that physically, emotionally, and spiritually. There aren't too many plants in the world that have the ability to do that. Or perhaps they all do, and we just haven't discovered that completely yet. I know a lot of herbalists have educated themselves on this exact matter, and we've seen the emergence in essential oils over the last decade or so, where they do have a direct impact on us emotionally, and some would say spiritually, and of course physically. So to be able to create a law that outlaws and criminalizes a plant that can be used in so many different ways is, again, I think it's criminal that actually has happened, because that is not a human right. I know so many people that have benefited from this plant, but I've also seen people that the plant is probably not their ally at this particular point in time because they've got unresolved emotional and spiritual issues that they haven't been able to deal with and come to some sort of resolution and some sort of evolution on their behalf. And cannabis can be a tool for that, but I think a lot of people see it as a magic plant, which it is. And that's why we went into creating a film about it, because it can be used as a tool for health, as I mentioned, but just like food can be an amazing tool for health, it isn't the be-all and end-all, as I alluded to earlier. There's different pillars of health. So I was concerned that cannabis was getting this rap that it could cure cancer, that it could cure these illnesses that people had. But when I was reading about it and hearing about this miraculous plant, people still weren't talking about the combination of a great diet. They weren't talking about the combination of really good sleep. They weren't talking about the benefits of looking at our emotional and spiritual health as well. So I felt like it was nearly a responsibility to offer that in a documentary like we did with Magic Pill, where we looked at food as well, so as to cover all of those bases. And we're doing the same thing with other plant medicines. We'll be looking at breath work. We'll be looking at other things in the coming years in which we can share that philosophy as well, is that there are wonderful tools out there, but let's not put all of our eggs into one basket, so to speak.
You've recently started a clinic or a health business down in Byron Bay. It's Evolve Health Labs, and you've got some really interesting therapies down there. So you're using infrared light therapy, which I used in my clinic for many years with quite good results. You've got the heat therapy there. You've got the cryotherapy and hyperbaric oxygen therapy as well. So what got you interested in those therapies, and why did you decide to start a health clinic with those specific therapies?
Yeah, thank you. We've opened Evolve Health Labs in Byron Bay as the first of many, what we would call biohacking clinics. So, and again, going back to what I've just been talking about, they aren't the be-all and end-all. They're tools in which we can add to our, so to speak, health repertoire, if we choose to. Nothing trumps what we've been talking about. Good nutrition, connection to nature, looking at our emotional and spiritual well-being, having good sleeps and relationships. Nothing can trump that. No supplement, I believe, can trump that. Those foundational health benefits or foundation or pillars of health. However, in saying that, we both know that the addition of a supplement or a herb or a medicine can be vitally important at just the right time, and depending on whether we're deficient in something or we've got too much of something, in the case of toxicity in heavy metals, as an example. So when we decided, and when I say we, it was my wife, Nicola, she's been a huge fan of biohacking over the last decade. She follows Dave Asprey as well as many others in that field very closely, and she shares her information with me as well. And it was really her idea to start this clinic, Evolve Health Labs, because she has found enormous benefits of using these technologies such as hyperbaric oxygen chambers, cryotherapy devices such as full body cryotherapy and localized cryotherapy, cryo treatments as we call them, as well as red light therapy. And when we've been discussing this, my wife and I, over the years, was like, I wonder if we can open a clinic like that at the right time to help people that are looking for these technologies and these therapies and these treatments that seem to help a lot of people out there in the world. So we followed our gut instinct, and the right venue came to us, and we decided to go forth and open this clinic. And we've been open now, I think, about 6 weeks, 7 weeks now, and we've had the most remarkable responses from a loyal group of clientele. And we haven't done much marketing on it, when it's sort of word of mouth. And we have had amazing testimonials from people that have needed this offering in their local community. And we're offering franchises to people around the world. for them to open up their own Evolve health clinics or health labs if they choose to. And in that offering, there'll be a great menu of choices, such as float tanks, ice baths, salt rooms. What else have we got out there that's on offer? Different modalities, so to speak. So people can pick and choose what they would like to have in their clinic, such as infrared saunas as well. There are so many different modalities that can be added to people's routine of a busy human being in the 21st century. And at the same time, we're just about to open a health retreat or a wellness retreat that is sort of the opposite of what we're offering in the clinic. So in the health retreat that we're about to open in 2021, early 2021, my wife and I, we're going to be offering people to come and have an immersive weekend or weeks with us. And in that, we will be presenting tea ceremonies. We'll be presenting breath work and yoga classes and meditation and cooking classes, in which we go back and good night sleeps, obviously, by having no Wi-Fi available or EMFs available in the rooms, if people choose to, and basically a digital detox. So what we've always wanted to do, going back to the first conversation today, was the best of both worlds, modern technology and ancient wisdom and natural therapies. So it's an exciting time for us to be able to share these pillars of health and wellness with the community and with people that are looking for this and looking to reconnect with nature, but also looking to see what is cutting edge in the health space as well. And again, people might find that strange, and I've had comments from people going, how can you promote a natural lifestyle yet promote hyperbaric oxygen or promote cryotherapy and modern technological devices? And it's like, well, again, I think you're forming a judgment of something that you probably haven't investigated, who I am and what I like to investigate and use as treatments for myself, and my wife likes to use as treatments for herself too. So it's an exciting time to be alive, that we get to, I guess, journey through this amazing time in human history where we have access to technology, ancient and modern.
If people are interested about finding more information on the Evolve Health Lab franchises, how do they get access to that information? Is there a website that they should go to, Pete?
Yeah, very simply, we have evolvehealthlabs.com, and on there is a franchise information section. So we've set this up with one of Australia's leading franchise experts, who has been instrumental in helping Anthony Robbins with his franchise model of OsteoStrong, which, if you haven't heard of OsteoStrong, I think it's a fascinating concept. I was interested in it a couple of years ago when I first heard about it. And OsteoStrong is with John Jaquish, who was one of my first guests on the podcast. And it's technology, modern technology, which helps to increase bone density. And fascinating concept. So the fellow that's helping them roll out OsteoStrong throughout Australia he's setting up the system for us to be able to help small business owners that are in the health space or people that want to be in the wellness space, set up a business that is professional with his help as well. So it's not a cowboy operation. And we're quite excited about the future of Evolve Health Labs and the people that we're going to be working with. We've already had 85 inquiries from around Australia and overseas, and I think we're opening our first 3 early next year for the first lot of franchisees that have committed to this. So watch this space. It's going to be exciting. And people can add them on to their existing clinics, so to speak. So a naturopath can have the ability to add that on to their existing business offering, so to speak. Or a gym can add it on to their existing offerings. So it's going to be an exciting time.
Yeah, it's so cool. And you've also got the health retreat that you mentioned as well. So I'm not sure if you've released any additional information about that. So how do people stay up to date with the progress of that health retreat? Is there a website available yet?
Yeah, the best website really is my personal website, peteevans.com. So you can subscribe to our newsletter, and from that we'll be sending out updates probably every couple of weeks to every month. We're not going to bombard you, but yeah, generally every few weeks we'll send out a newsletter so people can keep up to date. Because I've had some pretty heavy shadow banning and censoring through my social media platforms over the last few months, especially on Instagram and Facebook. But I do have a Telegram page set up called Chef Pete Evans, so that's gaining a good following at the moment for people that are departing Instagram and Facebook because they're sick of the censorship too.
There's so much that you've actually done and so many documentaries and wonderful information that you've been sharing with the general public. One other thing that particularly resonated with me was your work around the Nightcap on Minjungbal. So are you able to speak a little bit more about that and why you think that's an important cause?
Yeah, for sure. So I was having a conversation with a friend that I have great respect for, and he has been working with the tribal or the original people of Australia for quite some time, and is also working to put certain individuals and corporations on notice over this COVID and scam, as I call it. And he was mentioning this new project in community that was happening at this place called Nightcap on Minjungbal. So he said, "Would you like to meet some of the people involved in that?" And I said, "Yeah, I'd love to. If you respect them and they're your friends, then I'd be very happy to go and meet them." So we went out to Nightcap, and I met some of the original people or tribal people of this country, and they told me their story about why this is so important to the tribal people of Australia, why this first one is called Nightcap on Minjungbal is happening, and how long they've been working on it for, and what the flow and effect will be for different states around the country and actually different parts of the world as well, where the original tribal people can look to Nightcap to see a formula in which can work harmoniously inside and outside of the current systems. So what they're planning on, or what the intention is of Nightcap, is a community of individuals coming together to work harmoniously with the original people of this country and Western peoples as well, to learn from each other and to pay great respect and create a community where information can be shared and a transference of knowledge, basically. And what this will enable people to do is connect to country in a way that they haven't been able to before and have always dreamed about, by learning through the tribal people. So I was fascinated by that, and I've visited with them probably 8 to 10 times over the last 6 or so months. And each and every time that I enter into the Nightcap community and have conversations with not only the property developers but the original peoples, it makes so much sense to me why this needs to happen now and what the benefits will be, not only for Australia but for different parts of the world as well. So it's super exciting time that these opportunities are emerging. And if people want to learn more, they can watch the video that we created. It's on my website, peteevans.com, or you can go to Nightcap on Minjungbal to learn more. And I'm proud to be a part of this, and definitely is something I believe that is needed and will help shape the coming generations as well.
I think it's so important that you're bringing all of these really important topics to the forefront of people's minds. And many of the things that you've released, I've not been aware about or really given much thought about until I've seen your documentaries and listened to your podcast. So for that, I'd firstly like to start by saying thank you. Keep doing the good work. It means a lot to me, and I know that it means a lot to other people in the community as well. Are there any other interesting things that you're working on at the moment? Anything that you might be able to hint about? Maybe not give away too much, but...
Yeah, for sure. We've just launched our new platform called evolvenetwork.tv. So that's evolvenetwork.tv. And in that, we have the two documentaries that we spoke about before, The Magic Pill and The Magic Plant. We have 16 half-hour episodes of a cooking show we produced called The Paleo Way. And I think that's probably the best cooking show that's ever been created. And I've got my bias on that. But the reason that I say that is because it covers off so much information over those 8 hours of footage. Each episode has 3 or 4 recipes in which I'm cooking with wonderful people from around the world, such as doctors, naturopaths, people that have healed and improved their diseases or illnesses that they thought they never would have. I cook with farmers. I visit regenerative agricultural farmers and growers. I interview people that are raising animals holistically. We go through the slaughter process of a chicken in one of them, and we talk about wild sustainable seafood in another. We talk about gathering for plant-based alternatives as well as hunting. And we talk about the big picture, so to speak, and why this way of life can benefit not only ourselves and the community, but for the planet as a whole. And so that lives on the Evolve platform. We have 200 podcasts, so there's a couple of 100 hours of information there, as well as video interviews and expert interviews with people from around the world. We will be launching new documentaries on that platform every week from different content and producers from around the world. I think we've got Plandemic Indoctrination coming up soon. We have Esoteric Agenda 2. We have Thrive. So different people are letting us screen and air their content on the platform. We will be doing live cooking events every week and live chats every week as well for people that subscribe. So my intention with that platform, the Evolve Network, is to create one of the world's largest information databases and content providers for health and wellness and spirituality. So we're in our early stages. We've been working on this for a year now, and we just launched 2 weeks ago. So it's that's going to be an ongoing evolution as we're seeing YouTube heavily censored and people are being deplatformed left, right, and centre for sharing their truth. So I wanted to come up with a solution for that, which I'm excited about. And everything that I tend to be involved in is solution-based. So if we go back to the Paleo Way TV series and the Magic Pill documentary, what my intention with these is I couldn't find a cooking show on television that really represented long-term sustainable health. So I wanted to find a solution for that, and the solution for that was to create something ourselves. Same thing with the documentary space. I was looking for a solution or a great representation of what long-term sustainable health documentary would look like. And I couldn't find one in the health space. Everything I saw was sort of missing the mark, either by a lot or by a little. So I felt like there was an opportunity to present another solution-based alternative into that space. So to go back to your question of what's in the future is finding solutions to some of our biggest issues that we face. As I mentioned with the Evolve Network, it's finding a solution to heavy censorship through tech at the moment. What are the other huge issues that we're facing presently and in the future? I think the vaccine space is narrative. We need to find solutions for that. So I'm going to be heavily invested in my time into finding a solution or solutions moving forward in that realm if things progress as they seem to be wanting to progress from big pharma and big vaccine and big medical and the government into that space. So we can no longer just sit back on our hands and think that other people are going to come and save us and protect us and she'll be right, mate, because I see that mentality in the spiritual space. I see that mentality in some of the natural space where people are sitting on their hands and biting their tongue for fear of what that means for themselves and their business. And I honestly believe the time for sitting on our hands and biting our tongue or holding our tongue is well and truly over. And it comes down to each and every one of us. What are we prepared to sacrifice if we believe there is a sacrifice? And I was having this conversation earlier with somebody very near and dear, and they said, you're jeopardizing your potential for income with what you're doing. And I said, well, if I have a fear and insecurity about not voicing my own truth for fear of lack of income or financial stability, then that would mean that I'd still be living in fear. And I choose not to live in fear in any aspect of my life. And I have to trust in the process that when I have a fear, I need to be able to understand what that is and challenge that and work through that. And I'm very grateful to be able to be in this position where I have no fear about financial income or security by me voicing my opinion. It's if that was a situation that I was in, then I know there'd be more work that I needed to do around money and abundance and lack or scarcity or fear of that. And that is not my driving force. And hopefully people will work that out in themselves. And I do not judge anybody in that space. If people need to be quiet because they need to protect their income to feed their family, then that is their choice, and I will be neutral in that. However, I will say that if we as a collective continue to allow the destructive forces of censorship and our governments to dictate what is healthy for us as individuals and the population and the community, if we hand over that responsibility and that power and that birthright to somebody or something else, then what comes from that, there can never be any blame put onto anybody else for that acquiescence or that handing over of power. I live in a reality and an ideology and philosophy that I blame no one for any situation that I have found myself in other than myself. I accept full responsibility for every single action that I have done in the past and present and in the future that has led me to where I am currently and will lead me to where I am in the future. And when we come to fully realize that we are 1000% responsible for every single action in our life, then in that we will discover true freedom and liberation. And what that means for each and every one of us will be very different. But true freedom and liberation is, I believe, our default. It is a place in which, when we sit in that and experience that, then there is no fear. There is no judgment. We can exist in a neutral, non-reactive space. And that's not to say, again, that we do not take action. It's actually the opposite. We give ourselves full love and honor to take action for ourselves, for the betterment of ourselves, for the betterment of the community, for the betterment of our brothers and sisters, for the betterment of the planet. And it's a space in which I wish to inhabit as much as possible. So, each and every one of us will do his or her part in playing out this game of life. And I encourage everybody to live to their true potential without fear, however that may be.
Just in conclusion, Pete, I wanted to mention a book that I've recently been reading called The Four Agreements. It's by Don Miguel Ruiz.
Beautiful book.
And it is. It really is. And it was actually a book that my my personal doctor, my GP, recommended for me to read. And one of the agreements is don't let what others say and think affect you. And I think that's one of the reasons why people do live in such fear, because they're so worried about what other people are going to say and think. So if we're able to overcome those emotions, it's going to help us to evolve as human beings and to reach our full potential and speak our truth. So as we move into the conclusion of today, is there anything that you would like to leave the listeners with? Any final words or thoughts?
Yeah. Everything that I've spoken about for the last hour, don't believe. Because it's just my interpretation of the world and my identity. So it's my viewpoint. It doesn't need to be yours. And it's about, the thing that I've come to realize is we are all so unique, and we all have our stories, and we all have our journey in this life to remember what we're here to do and to discover and to remove and to share. And we are so beautiful and full of love, and every single human emotion, as you just mentioned. We have anger, we have hatred, we have love, we have compassion, we have gratitude, we have indifference, we have sympathy, empathy, apathy. We have it all. That's what it means to be human. And I believe true enlightenment and true contentment in this world is acknowledging that we have all of those wondrous emotions, and the ability to express that or not express it, and react and not react, and take action or contemplate and meditate and be silent, or to listen, or to witness, or to retreat, or to switch off, or to engage. We do this each and every single day. And when we become fully aware of who we are, then that is a beautiful thing. And then going into what you said about not worrying about other people's judgment, when we can witness that in others, in which we witness that in ourselves, then we can sit in non-judgment of others, so that we do not have to, one, compare ourselves in a negative or positive way, whether we're better or worse than somebody that we idolize or despise. Imagine if we just accepted everybody for who they are and that they're on their own personal journey of discovery and expression, and that we make mistakes along the way. And it's been an interesting one, and I'll use Trump as an example because I think he's probably the most polarizing person in the world at the moment. And where people hate or despise that image of that person or that identity of that person could be off one thing that man said 20 years ago. And I would ask everybody that forms a judgment on anybody, have you ever said or done anything in your past that you've come to realize probably wasn't the best thing or the best approach at that particular point in time? And could you imagine if you were to be judged on that for the rest of your life? And do we have the capacity to keep evolving and to learn from our mistakes and not even view them as mistakes, but just view them as stepping stones to greater awareness and understanding of who we are? Because without going down that journey of, oh, fuck, I wish I hadn't have said that then. I believe we've all gone through that. I probably go through it every day. So, yeah, maybe I could have said that a little bit better. What have I got to learn about that in that experience? And could you imagine if you just judged yourself off one thing that you've said and go, I fucking don't like that person anymore because he said or she said that? Could you imagine if we treated ourselves with that same disdain and judgment, that every time you looked in the mirror, you saw somebody that you hated or despised because of one action in your past or many actions that you've done in the past? Could you imagine if we looked at that person in the mirror being ourselves or to others and just love them unconditionally and give them space to grow and to acknowledge that it's just been a part of their journey? And, I know in the future I will say things and do things that will not be in perfect alignment of who I wish to be. But in doing that, it will also give me a great reference point again, like in the past, to be able to reevaluate, let those feelings emerge of the disappointment in myself, the regret, you reacted a bit too soon on that one, Pete. You're still not practicing that discernment as you said you would. So I'm excited about what is to unfold and what is unfolding and what has previously unfolded. And going back to the 4 agreements, when we take into consideration what that means, then I think we'll have greater compassion and understanding for our fellow human beings. And even looking at politicians such as, the fella in Victoria, Dan Andrews, when I look at that man, there's no despise or there's no hate in there when I view that. I question his motives. That is something that I do, and then I take action on that to question those motives, because what I see is somebody that looks like to be in a very uncomfortable and awkward and potentially compromised position where it does not seem like what he's doing is wholly and solely coming through him. And I would have to then question, I wonder what other external forces are pushing that man to behave in the way that he's behaving. So time will tell what that may be, as we're seeing in certain aspects of the US presidential election at the moment. What powers behind the scenes are influencing people's decisions. And we can bring that back into our own individual lives when we see, are we not posting something on social media because we're concerned of a university that we're involved in or a workplace that we're involved in will judge us harshly, or a family member might criticize us for sharing our truth. So we can see these sort of things playing out on a micro level and a macro level. So you do you and I'll do me, and let's respect each other for where we're at on this journey. And, that's all we can do. And we're consciously and unconsciously co-creating the world in which we inhabit. And that there is a paradox and quite a daunting awareness to have. Because if we're co-creating, then we would like the other people that are part of this to be moving in a forward direction that is better for humanity. But I cannot see that happening just yet. And so what can we do? Individually, we can create that forward direction that is best for humanity. And the more and more of the individuals that do this, then we will co-create a more beautiful world.
Amazing, Pete. That is so good to hear, those words of encouragement and promotion of unconditional love, because I think that's what's going to get us through this situation is unconditional love for one another and not hating one another or living in fear. So I do appreciate those sentiments that you've shared, and I think that everyone listening to this will really resonate with that as well. Thank you so much for taking the time to come and speak to me today. It's been a wonderful experience, and I really appreciate it. And it's been such a pleasure to hear your insights, and best of luck with everything that you're doing in the future. And I hope that we're able to possibly touch base again maybe in the coming months once you've started your health retreat, and maybe there's been some things evolve in the world that we can discuss further.
Mate, Dan, I just want to tell you, mate, I love you, and everybody that's listening, I love you as well. And remember, if these last words help, that prevention is better than cure. And if we are not co-creating the future in which we wish for the coming generations, we may have to go through a lot of pain to get to that point where we notice a lot of people don't change their habits until the pain outweighs or is excruciating for them to change their diet or their lifestyle. Let's just hope that that doesn't happen on a macro scale for humanity, that we have to get into that point of excruciating pain for change. And I would say let's focus on the prevention right now than having to get to that point as a species. So let's see how we go. Prevention, better than cure.
Ladies and gentlemen, that's Pete Evans. Thanks once again, Pete. It has been an absolute pleasure.
Cheers, brother. Have a great day. See you, mate.
Thanks for tuning in. We hope you enjoyed the show. If you have any questions or comments, head on over to humanley.com/podcast and join the discussion. Make sure to follow us on Facebook and become part of our growing community of like-minded health professionals. Until next time.